That Thanksgiving, their laughter became the soundtrack to my humiliation, my own parents and sister turning a family gathering into my public shaming. It was the moment my world finally, irrevocably shattered, the culmination of years of being the invisible child, the convenient afterthought. But to truly understand how we reached that breaking point, how decades of quiet slights and blatant favoritism could explode into such a devastating confrontation, you have to go back to where it all began. My name is Mina Miller, and at 26, carving out a life as a graphic designer in Chicago, the memories of my childhood in our small Midwest town often resurface, tinged with a persistent ache. It wasn't just the cornfields and quiet evenings that defined those years. It was the constant drama where my younger sister, Jessica, 7 years my junior, was the shining star. Her opinions were gold, her achievements celebrated with fanfare, while mine faded into background noise. If Jessica sneezed, the world stopped. If I won an award, it was a polite nod before conversation steered back to Jessica's latest school play or soccer game. This blatant favoritism was the air we breathed. This heavy blanket of disparity smothered any nascent spark of self-worth I desperately tried to ignite. I often felt like an invisible guest in my own home, an overlooked extra in the Miller family narrative, my needs and dreams apparently too insignificant to warrant serious attention. My grandparents, bless their kind souls, were the only ones who occasionally, with quiet dignity, attempted to restore some balance, their gentle chiding a brief, warm respite. But when Grandma passed, followed too soon by Grandpa, that fragile buffer against the constant criticism completely dissolved. Jessica, for a little while, would whisper words of support, her small hand squeezing mine when Mom's comparisons cut too deeply. But as Mom's sharp, critical tongue began to target her too whenever she dared to defend me, Jessica quickly learned, as I had long before, that silence was often the safest, albeit perhaps the loneliest harbor. The dream of attending a prestigious art school, a vision I'd nurtured since I first held a crayon, evaporated the moment my parents declared there was simply no money for such extravagances, especially for me. Their resources, it was always implied, were reserved for Jessica's bright future in a real profession. So, with a heart heavy with disappointment, but a spirit stubbornly refusing to break, I packed my meager belongings and left our Midwest town for the bustling anonymity of Chicago. My first job was far from glamorous, an office assistant at a small advertising agency, fetching coffee and making copies. But I watched the designers, listened intently, and absorbed everything. Every evening, instead of lamenting what I didn't have, I pored over online tutorials, practiced on borrowed software, and slowly, meticulously, built my skills. The city was a tough teacher, but its energy fueled my ambition. My passion for graphic design, for bringing ideas to visual life, was a fire that no amount of parental disapproval could extinguish. It took years of relentless effort, late nights, and countless rejections, but eventually, my dedication paid off. I climbed the ladder, first to a junior designer role, then to a full-fledged graphic designer, trusted with significant projects and earning a reputation for my creativity and work ethic. During those transformative years, visits back home were rare and brief. Each trip was a painful reminder of the old wounds, the familiar sting of being an afterthought. So I poured myself entirely into my career, finding solace and validation in my own hard-won achievements. The distance, both physical and emotional, became a necessary shield. 8 years after I'd left home, a call from Jessica brought unexpected news. She'd been accepted into a highly ranked law school right there in Chicago. her voice a mixture of excitement and a nervousness I hadn't heard in years. A flicker of genuine pride sparked within me. Despite everything, she was my sister, and this was a significant accomplishment. I offered her a warm, sincere congratulation, but then the familiar cadence of a family request began to creep into the conversation. Jessica, sounding coached, mentioned that the law school had suggested a voluntary alumni contribution, a hefty sum of around $7,000, on top of the already steep admission fees and upcoming tuition. It wasn't mandatory, she quickly added, but Mom and Dad were apparently very concerned about how it would look if they didn't contribute, especially since Jessica was entering such a prestigious institution. They were, of course, strapped for cash after her high school graduation expenses and couldn't possibly manage it. The implication hung heavy in the air. Mina, the successful one in the big city, should step in. The audacity was breathtaking. After years of being dismissed and denied support for my own dreams, they now expected me to bankroll Jessica's. My parents, true to form, hadn't even bothered to ask me directly, instead using Jessica as their messenger. A bitter resentment churned in my stomach, yet, looking back, I knew I couldn't let Jessica's opportunity falter because of their manipulative tactics. Perhaps it was a lingering sense of duty, or maybe a foolish hope that this act of generosity might finally earn me a sliver of their respect. Reluctantly, I agreed to cover the contribution and the initial fees. Jessica moved into a small apartment near her campus in Chicago, and since it wasn't far from my place, I initially imagined we might build a new, more adult relationship. I envisioned offering her support, a friendly face in the demanding world of law school. However, as she became immersed in her studies and surrounded by a new, ambitious peer group, her responses to me grew increasingly curt and transactional. My attempts at connection were met with text messages like, "Need money for books," or "Can you order me takeout?" Too busy. I'd quietly arrange whatever she needed, a familiar ache settling in as I realized I was still playing the role of the convenient background support system. Occasionally, we'd manage a quick dinner, but even then, Jessica remained distant, her attention glued to her smartphone, her conversation peppered with jargon and names I didn't recognize. When I tried to lighten the mood or ask about her classes beyond perfunctory answers, she'd sigh, complaining about the crushing workload and the inferior intellect of some of her classmates. Her entire demeanor shifted, taking on an air of superiority that was deeply unsettling. During one such strained meal, I attempted a light-hearted jab. "Well, Mom and Dad probably only care about your brilliant legal mind now, huh?" I smiled, trying to bridge the widening gap. Jessica, however, didn't smile back. She stared at me, her expression chillingly cold, and then snorted. "Of course, a top-tier law student like me and a graphic designer who barely finished high school are hardly comparable, Mina. Let's be real. No one truly respects a job you can learn from YouTube tutorials." Her words, delivered with such casual cruelty, felt like a physical blow, echoing the dismissiveness I'd endured my entire life, now weaponized by the very sister I'd just helped. That Thanksgiving, against my better judgment, I agreed to drive back to our Midwest hometown with Jessica. Mom had been insistent, framing it as a chance for the whole family to celebrate Jessica's achievements. The moment we stepped through the door, it was clear whose achievements were on the agenda. The dining table, usually set with modest fare, was groaning under the weight of an elaborate turkey, multiple side dishes, and fancy desserts, a feast clearly orchestrated for the returning law school prodigy. Neighbors and a few distant relatives trickled in, and Jessica, basking in the adulation, held court. "It's just so demanding at a top-tier law school," she'd declare loudly. "Mom keeps asking me to come home more, but honestly, with moot court and networking events, I barely have time to breathe." I retreated to the kitchen, busying myself with clearing plates, the familiar sting of invisibility a dull ache. But her voice, amplified by parental pride, was inescapable. When I brought out a tray of coffee, Mrs. Henderson, an old family friend, kindly tried to include me. "Mina, dear, still doing that wonderful design work in Chicago?" Before I could utter a word, Mom cut in, her voice sharp. "Oh, you can't really say much about that. She tries, but she didn't even go to college, you know. Such a disappointment, really." A thick, awkward silence descended. Dad then chimed in, a smirk playing on his lips. Now, don't say that, dear. Poor Mina, her feelings might get hurt." Jessica joined their laughter, a high, brittle sound. "She still comes home a lot, though, doesn't she?" Jessica added, looking directly at me. "Guess you don't have much else going on." My anger, simmering for years, finally boiled over. My fists clenched. "It's better if I don't come back next year," I managed, my voice tight. "I get it." The relatives and Mrs. Henderson looked at me with varying degrees of concern and pity, but I barely registered their expressions. I set the coffee tray down with a clatter that echoed the tremor in my hands, grabbed my coat and purse from the hall closet, the worn fabric a small comfort against the storm raging inside me. Jessica just smirked, a dismissive wave of her hand accompanying her parting shot. "Fine by me." "Don't bother." My parents, their faces masks of casual indifference, merely shrugged, as if my departure was as insignificant as a fly buzzing out an open window. Heart pounding with a furious cocktail of anger and profound sorrow, I stepped out into the biting November wind, the cold a welcome shock against my heated skin. I didn't look back, didn't offer a single word of farewell to the people who had so thoroughly, so publicly dismissed my entire existence. The walk to the bus station, though only a few blocks, felt like miles, each step heavy with the weight of years of accumulated hurt. I fought to suppress the tsunami of emotions threatening to overwhelm me, the shame of being so openly humiliated, the fury at their casual cruelty, and the deep, aching grief for the family I wished I had, the family that clearly didn't want me unless I served their purpose. Returning home had always left me with a heavy heart, a fresh layer of pain added to old scars. But this was different. This wasn't just another painful visit, it was a brutal, definitive severing. As I waited for the late-night bus back to Chicago, I realized with a chilling clarity that if I truly valued my own work, my own self-respect, I couldn't continue this toxic charade. It was in that cold, desolate bus station that I decided this goodbye was for good. Months passed in a blur of focused work and a newfound, albeit fragile, peace. The silence from my family was a relief, a space where I could finally breathe without bracing for the next dismissive remark or unreasonable demand. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It buzzed again and again. Reluctantly, I picked up. "Mina, it's Jessica." Her voice, usually laced with arrogance, now carried a distinct note of panic. "Did you pay my tuition for this semester?" I paused, taking a slow breath. "Jessica, I paid the alumni contribution and your initial entrance fees before you even started classes last year. What about this semester's tuition?" "Well, the university is asking for it urgently." she snapped, entitlement quickly replacing the panic. They're saying I'll be dropped from my classes if it's not paid by Friday. It's around $35,000. I knew, of course, that I hadn't paid it. My initial support had drained a significant portion of my savings at the time, and it was always meant to be a one-off gesture. After the Thanksgiving debacle and their blatant dismissal, the thought that they'd still expect me to foot her bills was almost laughable, if it weren't so infuriating. I don't know anything about that, Jessica, I stated calmly. Didn't Mom and Dad send you to a prestigious, out-of-state private law school because they could afford it? Or did they enroll you knowing they didn't have the funds, assuming I'd cover everything indefinitely? A flustered silence met my question before she stammered. Well, no, but things came up. The things were, I suspected, their continued inability to manage money and their unwavering belief in my role as the family ATM. This time, however, the ATM was officially closed for business. A few days after my call with Jessica, my mother's name flashed on my caller ID. I let it ring, then listened to the furious, accusatory voicemail demanding I do the right thing and pay Jessica's tuition. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of their behavior, just the same entitled expectation. It only solidified my resolve. Jessica then began a relentless campaign of calls and texts, each message more desperate and self-centered than the last. Please, Mina, you have to pay. I'll be expelled. All my hard work will be for nothing. And scholarships and part-time jobs aren't enough. It would be a travesty if someone as promising as me had to leave law school. She even tried a pitiful attempt at manipulation. If you're just upset because they told you not to come home, I can try to persuade Mom and Dad to let you visit again. I saved a few of her more absurd messages as a grim reminder, then blocked her number, and my parents too. No one, not even family, deserved to be treated as a doormat. Sometime later, I heard through a sympathetic distant aunt that Jessica had managed to scrape together some loans and a small scholarship to cover her second year's tuition. However, without my financial safety net for her living expenses and the lifestyle she'd become accustomed to, she was forced to work multiple part-time jobs. The strain of balancing demanding coursework with grueling hours proved too much. Her grades plummeted, and she eventually dropped out of law school altogether. With no degree and no other prospects, Jessica returned to our parents' house in the Midwest. But their finances, already strained, were now depleted. My father, under immense stress, was then embroiled in a minor financial scandal at his workplace and was forced to resign in shame. My mother, with little recent work experience, struggled to find any job that could sustain them. The proud Miller family was crumbling. While the drama of the Miller family imploded back in the Midwest, my life in Chicago had taken a decidedly different upward trajectory. The freedom from their constant negativity and unreasonable expectations was like a weight lifted, allowing me to pour all my energy into my passion. My graphic design career flourished. I was headhunted by a major design firm, and my work started gaining industry recognition. I led a high-profile branding campaign that put my name on the map, and with it came a significant salary increase and a growing sense of professional accomplishment I'd once only dreamed of. The peace of mind was invaluable. For the first time, I felt truly in control of my own destiny, unburdened by the guilt and obligations that had shadowed me for so long. With my savings now secure and my confidence soaring, I decided it was time to pursue another long-held dream, one that had been cruelly snatched away years ago, a formal university education. But this time, it wouldn't be art school. My experiences had taught me the value of business acumen and independence. I diligently prepared for and took the graduate management admission test, and to my immense joy, I was accepted into a respected Master of Business Administration program. My goal was clear: to combine my creative talents with solid business knowledge, and in the future, launch my own design agency. As I walked onto the university campus for my first orientation, a thrill of excitement, a feeling I hadn't experienced in years, coursed through me. The path ahead was challenging, yes, but it was my path, chosen by me, for me. My heart raced not with anxiety or resentment, but with genuine, unadulterated anticipation for what was to come. My journey, from that overlooked kid in our Midwest town to a graphic designer in Chicago, now on the cusp of launching my own agency, wasn't just about career success. It became a profound lesson in the enduring importance of self-worth and the courage it takes to set firm boundaries. What I've learned, more than anything, is that you simply cannot allow anyone, even your own family, to diminish your value or dictate your path. The painful truth, one I had to confront head-on, is that sometimes, for your own well-being and growth, severing ties with those who consistently bring negativity and disrespect into your life isn't an act of cruelty, but an act of profound self-preservation. My family's story also serves as a stark reminder, at least to me, of the destructive impact of favoritism and emotional abuse, highlighting how such dynamics can poison relationships and ultimately lead to sorrow. Conversely, my own resilience and unwavering dedication to my craft, even without their support, proved that self-reliance and a commitment to personal development are truly keys to unlocking one's own potential. What does my story make you reflect on? Have you ever faced difficult choices to protect your own peace and dignity? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If my story resonated with you, please hit the like button and share it. Perhaps it can help someone else. And for more stories about navigating life's challenges, don't forget to follow my channel. Remember, you deserve respect, happiness, and the freedom to build the life you envision.